welcome to 30 Minutes of Faith. We are joined today by Arta Monjazeb. I hope I pronounced that close.
That's spot on.
Names have fascinated me all my life because I just have a two-syllable name, John Fish. And even little children in my life who weren't my own children think John Fish is just one name. And they'll say, "Oh, hi, John Fish." You know, names have always fascinated me. Now, you are born and raised where?
So I was born in Tehran, Iran, but I was raised in San Diego, California.
Are your parents still living?
My parents are both still living.
And are they in the United States?
They are. They both are in San. They're actually here right now visiting me, but they're both residing in San Diego.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I do. I have an older brother and an older sister, so I'm the baby of the family.
Ah. And you are an MD?
Yes, sir.
Did you decide to be a doctor when you were 6?
No, I actually, so I took an interesting path. I decided to be a researcher from a very young age. I was always interested in science and interested in research, and was always more interested in getting a PhD.
Which you have.
Which I do have. But during college, my really focus of research interest became cancer. And I realized that the best way to really do cancer research that is going to be applicable and to make a difference in patients' lives is to also get the MD and to be able to see and treat patients and really understand what their needs are. So I did a joint degree where I received a PhD and an MD for that purpose.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you something that's a little personal to me. It's not meant to be put you on the spot at all.
Oh, no, please.
My mother died of cancer, and my wife is a breast cancer survivor. And we do the walks and go to all of the things, you know, we're active and donate and all those other things. Will we find a cure for cancer in our lifetime?
That's an interesting question. Yes and no, and I'll kind of qualify that. I don't think that cancer is one disease. You know, we take many different diseases and we put them under this one title of cancer. But for example, breast cancer behaves very differently than prostate cancer, which behaves very differently than lung cancer, which behaves very differently than stomach cancer.
Very interesting to know.
So I don't think that there will ever be one kind of magic bullet cure that cures all of these diseases. However, one thing that I'm researching and an area that the field is really starting to turn towards is understanding how cancers arise and kind of the biology of the cancer in the way that our bodies respond to the cancers. So for example, a lot of my research is looking at our immune system and how we could perhaps use our immune system to fight off cancer the same way that it would fight off an infection or a virus or something like that. So I think as we're making advances in our understanding of cancer that we will continue to improve our therapies and perhaps find cures for types of cancer and hopefully one day find cures for all types of cancer, but I don't think that there will be one cure for all types of cancer.
That's interesting to hear. I haven't heard that explained like that before. Are you familiar with the term downwinders from the atomic bomb blasts?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We lived in southern Utah. We'd get up in the morning to watch them because the sky would light up with that green blue, and then you waited for a minute or two, and then the sound, you know, would roll through under the ground, and it would shake like an earthquake, and we thought it was really neat. And then in the hills up and around the area, when it would sometimes snow pink. And we'd eat pink snow, and we thought that was really, really good. And my mother's cancer appeared as a cold sore. But in 3 days, had filled the roof of her mouth and everything else. And, you know, she went through a lot of things.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, we all die. And you know, we don't expect to die that way. And it was unpleasant, but, you know, so be it. Do you see patients?
I do. So I spend about half of my time seeing patients and then half of my time in the lab doing research.
And do you feel like you're making progress in people's lives?
I would like to think so. I mean, I think our current therapies are effective for many types of cancers. The majority of patients who I see, I expect to be able to provide a cure for statistically. And I think that as we're moving forward with newer therapies, that rate will only increase. But having said that, there's unquestionably still a lot of work that needs to be done. I still do see, too many patients for whom the only thing that I can offer is palliation, which is still important. It's important to be able to help somebody, die respectfully, and to help somebody, be free of pain during the time that they have left. But I would feel much better about what I do if I could offer those patients, a better fighting chance, and that's really what drives what I do on the research end of things.
Well, and for whom the bells toll, sometimes the bells can be a good sound.
Yes, sir.
Now, I want to change focus a little bit. Growing up in San Diego, what went on down there in your childhood? I mean, did you learn to surf and those kinds of things?
Yeah, it's a beach town, so we did go to the beach quite a bit, surfing, boogie boarding, spending time with friends. Yeah, it was an interesting place and an interesting time because we came right as the revolution was happening in Iran. Our family came out actually for a vacation and ended up never going back.
Wow.
But obviously in retrospect was the right decision. But it was an interesting time because being Iranian and being in San Diego, which also has a very large military town,
Yes.
there was certainly some negativity towards me and towards kind of our background. Little did people realize that the things about Iran that they disliked were the same things that we came to America to escape. But sometimes that kind of understanding takes a while to come about.
Why do we express sort of hateful things? Do you have a take on that? Why do we act that way?
I think there's probably two parts to it. I think it's ignorance and it's fear.
Well stated.
Yeah, I think that sometimes it's easier to hate than it is to think for yourself and really understand what somebody else is going through, and to really kind of understand the situation. It's an easier knee-jerk reaction to say, well, that's different than me, and so that's bad. And then I think there's also part of it that I'm not going to say it's in our nature, but it's also, again, an easy way out, if you will, to think that, well, for me to be wrong, for me to be right, this other group has to be wrong. And so it's very divisive to think that way, but sometimes that's an easier way to think, and the harder way to think is to really use our intellect and our faculties that God has given us, and to really kind of investigate the situation and to truly understand what's going on.
Were your parents broad-minded and taught you to be open to lots of things?
I would like to think so. I mean, certainly there's a broad-mindedness that just comes with being from two cultures. They were raised in Iran. They had an Iranian culture, and then coming here had to adapt to an American culture. So I think just that in and of itself makes them more broad-minded than the average American or the average Iranian. But I think also part of it comes back to our religion and the teachings of our religion. One of the fundamental teachings of our religion is something called independent investigation of truth. And that's that each individual is really responsible before God to investigate the truth of a matter, be it religion or be it something else, such that you're not a Baha'i, for example, because your parents were Baha'is. It is incumbent upon you to actually investigate the Baha'i faith, investigate other religions, and to really make that decision for yourself. So I think that a broad-mindedness comes from that approach.
And were your parents Baha'i?
Yes, they were.
And your siblings, have they stayed
They
involved
have.
with the Baha'i faith?
They have, yes, sir. Yes, sir. But I would say probably about 50% of Baha'is at this point in the United States are people who found the religion by themselves. So I think I'm more of a unique situation just because of my background and where we came from.
Do you have children?
Yes, I do.
And are they being raised then in the Baha'i faith to think and search and find themselves?
Yes, they certainly are. My daughter is only 3.5, but we already have her attending kind of a Sunday school type service, which really is more about teaching virtues and teaching kind of the way that all the different religions really encompass the same virtues and really value the same virtues of truthfulness, honesty, respect for others, and so it's a virtues type education that I think will be, helpful to her throughout her life, whatever she chooses for her religious path.
I had a very good friend in the military who he and his wife were Baha'is, and his name was Harry Jolliffe, and he was not only devout, but he was honest and dependable and reliable and all of the good things, and he was easy to admire and easy to like. We had a lot of religious discussions, and he liked to stick with, just truth, justice, and the American way, I guess we'll say, and I always found that refreshing. He wasn't, we didn't go off into the mysteries, and we didn't go off into the sort of mystical. We just kind of stayed with truth and the goodness of other faiths and other religious practices. Now, I know in Greater Sacramento the Baha'i groups meet in sort of separate places. There isn't one singular Baha'i meeting house.
That's correct.
So where do you meet, and how big of a group, and is it every Sunday?
So within Sacramento, there is somewhere, I would say, in the range of, within Sacramento City proper, not the different suburbs. There's, I would say, somewhere in the range of about 300 Baha'is. And we meet, we don't meet every Sunday as we don't have church. What we do have is basically a spiritual gathering that occurs once every 19 days. Those gatherings can occur at a community center, or it can also occur at someone's home. If whoever is hosting that particular gathering can decide if they would like it to be in their home or if they'd like it to be in a community center. And really what those gatherings consist of, it's a time for the community to get together, to share in devotions, so it's kind of a spiritual refresher for the community as a whole. But it's also a time for the community to discuss and consult about kind of the community's ongoing activities, activities going on in communities around us and within the greater Baha'i world. So it's both a time for kind of spiritual regeneration, but also a time for kind of also taking care of the practical aspects of the religion.
I have met with a couple of the Baha'i groups, and the first one I met with was out in Rockland, and they asked me what I would like to hear. And I told them on that particular night I'd like to just learn more about the Baha'is. And they had a little PowerPoint presentation set up, very informative and enlightening to me. I really, really liked it. And then they had some food and drink, and we did some serious talking and we did some laughing, and I really, really enjoyed that. In Folsom, come and join with us, and they were talking that particular night about, what will be unfolding in our surroundings in school and church and the community and that in the next year or two. And the presenter had done a lot of good homework, and that was right after the theaters had opened out at Folsom Lake College. And they were talking about some of the things that were going to be brought, pros and cons. Anyway, I really enjoyed myself. It's not deep intellect, but it is intellectual.
Yes, yeah, and every gathering you go to will be a little bit different, even within a given community. Each 19-day gathering will be different. There's no clergy within the Baha'i faith, and so there is, a set course of things that need to happen when we get together. For example, for these 19-day meetings, there should be a spiritual or devotional portion. There should be a portion where the administrative tasks of the community are addressed, and there should be a social portion. Those are kind of the three aspects of that meeting. But how those different things occur are really different from each meeting to each meeting. So it's kind of nice and it's refreshing. And obviously within communities, but between communities, there are differences as well. But the commonality of it all is that we're getting together to help build both our Baha'i community, but the community in general around us, the larger community.
Is there some significance to the 19 days?
There is. So the Baha'i calendar is set up such that it's 19 months, each month being 19 days long. And then that leaves an additional 4 days at the end of the year, 5 days during leap year, which are kind of a time of reflection and charity and those types of things. But so these meetings are set up so they're the first day of each month.
Now, we talked before the cameras turned on about Haifa, Israel.
Yes,
and of course, I've not been there, but I've Googled it and I've researched it, and I was given a book about it to read, and that was real delightful. Have you ever been in Haifa?
I have. I've had the good fortune of going twice during my lifetime.
That big temple and the grounds and all of the things there are beautiful.
Yeah, it's the gardens are very well kept, and the temples are very nice. It's interesting. There's one temple, there's a few administrative buildings, but really the focus is the nature and the gardens, and so the way that it's set up and the way that it kind of as you come into the bay and you can kind of see the mountain with these terraces of gardens and the temple in the middle, it's really quite breathtaking.
And can the regular Baha'i person go in the temple?
Yes, sir, and the temple is open to the community at large as well, so it's not only for Baha'is. It's obviously a holy place for us, so it's a place of prayer and a place of worship, but it's open to the public as well, so for anyone to come there and see it and worship.
And the first time you went there, did it meet your expectations?
It did. I was in junior high school the first time I went, and it's a site of Baha'i pilgrimage, so I went with my family, and it was an amazing experience to just be there and see that and see something that from a young child I had seen pictures of, and to really see it in person. And but even more so, I think the spiritual nature of it was very important to me, especially at that time during my development. It was a good way to kind of refresh my senses and really get back into touch with who I am spiritually. And it's interesting because in the Baha'i faith we don't really have the concept of one place being more holy than another place. So for example, we don't have churches with the idea that the church is more holy than for example, your home. Obviously, certain ones of these temples where the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith is interred is thought to be a very holy spot. But aside from that, it's really, I think, just the atmosphere of spending that time really just in prayerful reflection, I think, is what makes it so important. And if you have that time to even do that at home, I think you could achieve a similar effect. But it's sometimes with our crazy lives difficult to spend 9 or 10 days in prayerful reflection the way you can when you're on pilgrimage.
I go to the temple in my faith, and I go to church on Sunday in my faith, but I was raised that the great cathedral of our lives would be the home. That's where we could find peace and everything good.
Sure.
I'm sorry when there are homes that don't live that way, but I was fortunate enough to be raised in one that was. We were at the Vatican several years ago, and there was a large group of junior high kids on pilgrimage, and it was we spent the day there, and that was very pleasing to watch. Some of the kids were sort of joking and goofing off. Several dried their tears. Others were quiet and reverent. There was a great thing. And then a couple of years after that, we were in Lhasa, Tibet, and a pilgrimage was coming to the great building there, and they were more in awe at that place, I think. They were how old it was and the way it looked. How did you come to meet your wife, and how did you end up in Sacramento and all of those sorts of things?
That's a long and complicated story. So with my wife, she's actually also a Baha'i, and we met the summer before I started college. I was doing a social service project through the Baha'i faith in San Francisco, so I'd come up from San Diego to San Francisco, and it was a summer-long project, and actually my last day on that project was her first day, so we overlapped just by one day. And that was the first time that we met, but they ended up coming. My friends who stayed on that project after I left ended up coming to visit me in Santa Cruz, where I was then being a cabin counselor for a Baha'i summer school, and so we met again during that period of time. And one thing led to another, and we ended up kind of staying in touch while I was in college, and she was in college down in Southern California, and she ended up transferring up to UC Berkeley, where I went to college for her last 2 years, and it just happened from there. It was very, very kind of a natural process.
Were you taken by her though very early on? I mean, did she seem like somebody
This
pretty
is
special?
televised, so obviously I have to say yes. But no, I certainly was. She was, during that period of time, it was a time where we were doing a lot of social service and also a lot of prayerful reflection. So I think I was very fortunate to meet her when I was in that state of mind and when I could really, appreciate just not her physical beauty, but her spiritual beauty. So I think I was very fortunate that we met during that period of time.
Were your parents happy in their marriage? Did you get a good example of how a man and woman ought to live together?
I think overall they were happy. I mean, as with any married couple, they had their occasional arguments, but I think one thing that I learned from them is really the value of family and the value of unity within the family. And that was really a value that was held above everything else within our household, was maintaining unity within the family. We had close friends, we had close, my father had close work associates, but there was always time put aside to ensure that there was time spent bonding within the family and creating unity within the family. And really everybody's input was kind of taken into consideration, which is, I think, a little bit unusual for kind of a Middle Eastern families tend to be very patriarchal with a dominant male who kind of, and certainly my dad has a very dominant male type personality. He's only 5'2", but has a booming voice, and he's a college professor, so he's very good at lecturing. But having said that, there was always respect for our individuality, and there was always a sense that no matter what, we knew that we were loved, and that love within our family would rise above anything else. So I think that value is something that I still value, and I try to create in my own home.
And they're probably very proud their son's a doctor and doing good things and all of that.
Yes, yeah, I do believe that they are proud.
What do did you say brother and sister?
Yes, sir.
What are they doing in their lives?
So my brother is in the computer field. He's I guess if you were at a business, he would be your IT guy, the tech guy. He does computer networking and computer programming.
And is he somebody you can call and say, I can't get this laptop to do whatever, and he can walk you through?
I can. Usually I don't understand the answers he gives me, and I just have to, next time I see him, have him do it for me. But he certainly is. He's very, very, very intelligent and very, very computer savvy. And then my sister does home mortgages. So she's in the mortgage business, but she was actually much like myself, trained as a scientist. But I think as she had children and had a growing family, I think it became hard to maintain that lifestyle and still really devote as much time as she wanted to the family. And so I think it kind of led to a career change to an extent.
You have a very nice family. Is family emphasized in the Baha'i faith as far as when you're together? Do you talk about respect and love and affection and those kinds of things?
Yeah, I think without question, the family in the Baha'i faith, as in any religion, is really the building unit of society. And one of the things that the Baha'i faith seeks to bring about is unity and love within the world. And it's stated very clearly in the Baha'i writings that if that unity and that love does not exist in the family, the basic building block of society, then it's impossible to achieve that within the greater world. So the family is really held in very high importance, as is the education given to children by the family is held in high importance, and parents are held responsible to God for educating their children, both spiritually but with material education as well.
Do you work with good people?
I think that I do. We work at an academic center, which means that the people who are there are really there with the purpose of trying to make the field advance. And I think there's something to be said for that. I think there's a certain type of physician who goes into academic medicine. I think all physicians in general are people who are dedicated to their patients and improving the lives of their patients. But I think the ones who go into academics have a specific focus on research and really trying to advance the field. So because of that, I think I work with people who not only care deeply for their patients, but are also highly inquisitive and open-minded people, and really are searching for solutions.
When I was a teenager in a small town, there was just the one doctor in general practice, but he liked boats, and he had about 4 or 5 of them. And some of them were, just little dinky boats that he liked to play around with, but he had a nice big speedboat that had a 427 engine in it. And he had learned in his life that you can't own a boat unless you know how to fix it and repair it and take care of it. And he knew how to work with fiberglass, and he was also a good engine mechanic and all those other things. And so when you'd be sitting in his office talking to him, even if he was giving you a physical or checking you for some illness or something, you didn't talk medicine much. You talked, how's the car running, and what's it doing, and all those other things, and then stuff about boats and the lakes and the rivers and all those things. Well, it's wonderful to have you come and visit with us.
Yeah, I appreciate the invitation.
And I'm glad that we were able to hook up. If you could wave a magic wand in the world and change or fix something, what would that be?
I think I would try to change the way that people relate to each other. I think that fundamentally, regardless of religious background, regardless of ethnic background, regardless of economic background, that we're all very similar. We all are loving beings. We all crave love from our fellow human beings because we see the love of God reflected in them. And I think if we took just more time to really understand each other's point of views, to learn about each other, we would really see that the commonality in that love, and that would really, A, relieve a lot of the world's prejudices and problems, but B, would also give us a sense of family where you couldn't sit by and watch another person suffer meaninglessly because you viewed them as really a member of your own family, and you would feel compelled to do something about that. So I think that could solve a lot of the world's problems.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.